Iran has sentenced 3 more protesters to death on charges of waging war against God. The 3 anti-government protesters were convicted of allegedly killing members of a militia during the demonstrations. It comes just days after the execution of 2 men over the demonstrations. Joining us live now for more on this is Khansarinia from the National Union of Democracy in Iran. Cameron, thank you for your time. Firstly, can I get your reaction to the execution of anti-government protesters?
Well, it's both devastating about the action and inspiring in terms of the Iranian people's response. The Islamic Republic has long used violence to attempt to control the Iranian people. It's long used street violence since the beginning of this revolution. More than 100 days ago, we've seen the regime kill people wantonly in the streets. Now we're entering the second phase, where the regime is what is being called executing, but in actuality is really murdering prisoners of conscience in Iranian prisons. We've now seen several already killed. Each week, unfortunately, we see more announcements of these to-be executions. But what's been inspiring has been the Iranian people's response. They're not backing down in the face of such violence. Last night, we saw thousands of everyday Iranians go in front of the prison at which these 2 young men were to be executed at 3 o'clock in the morning. And chant against the regime and effectively, for now, save the lives of these 2 protesters.
What's prompted the latest protests, and how are the protests being portrayed by Iranian authorities?
Your viewers will have likely now heard the name Mahsa Amini. Mahsa Amini was a young Iranian girl who was quite literally murdered for the mere crime of showing her hair in public. And this was the straw, really, that broke the camel's back in Iran after 43 years of all forms of oppression against women, oppression against religious minorities, against Iranians who simply want to prioritize their national heritage as opposed to this forced Islamist religious heritage that this regime has forced on the Iranian people. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. People now on the streets are talking about nothing short than revolution, nothing short of a transition to a secular democracy, a transition away from this regime. Of course, the Islamic Republic is calling this a Western-backed or a foreign-backed plot. What it really is the Iranian people in a renaissance, in a rebirth. One of the main chants we hear on the streets of Iran every single day is, "We will reclaim Iran." The Iranian people, the protesters on the street, view this regime not as their government, but as an occupying force, and they intend to reclaim it.
Is the Islamic Republic losing support?
It is. I think we've now seen this protest movement last more than 3 months. It's in every single one of Iran's provinces. This movement has crossed gender lines. It's, of course, called the first women's revolution in history, but it's being supported by those women's brothers and sisters and fathers and friends. So it's crossed gender lines. It's crossed socioeconomic lines. So this is really a national movement against this regime, and the regime day by day is losing support. It's losing support from socioeconomic classes or even religious classes that it used to be able to rely on. Even in the most holy Islamic cities in the country, you see women in fully covering black chadors against this regime. People that this regime used to think that they could rely on. What is most interesting is we're also seeing fissures within this regime. We are seeing members of the armed forces refuse orders to fire on peaceful protesters. So this is really a movement that has changed Iranian history, and there's no point of return as I see it.
Is the international condemnation having a significant impact, and are Western countries like the US doing enough?
Well, condemnation in the first phase is not only impactful, but it's critical. Unfortunately, we've passed the first phase. This revolution has surpassed 100 days. The time for world leaders to condemn the Islamic Republic's use of grotesque violence against the Iranian people has passed. It was appreciated. It was appreciated by Iranians. It was impactful. But now it's time for action. The Islamic Republic, after weeks and months of condemnation, has now brushing it off. things that can actually be done are actually quite tangible. For example, the Australian government can withdraw its ambassador from Tehran. It can send back the Islamic Republic's ambassadors to Tehran. Other Western powers, European countries in particular, should do the same. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, should be placed on terrorist lists. Leading regime officials should be sanctioned with Magnitsky sanction. And in addition to a policy of maximum pressure on this regime, global powers can begin a policy of maximum support for the Iranian people.
Cameron Khansarinia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.